Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first problem that we are going to work on regarding the portfolio. So I'd listen up. Your question is going to ask you this, and if you've already watched the other video and you've taken a look at the Math Portfolio Classwork Sample 1, Question 1, you should know what the word proportional means and what it means to have a proportional relationship. So I'm just going to go over what that means real quick again. A proportional relationship basically means that each one of these points, when you write them in a fraction, will equal each other. Now, you might be wondering, how can two different fractions equal each other? Well, here's an example of that. So you know that 1 over 2 is equal to what? 0.50, right? So let's look at another fraction that could also be equal to 0.50 or 50%. So let's look at 2 over 4. We know that 2 over 4 is 1/2. So that's also 0.50. And to actually solve this is you divide each one of these two numbers by the greatest common factor. And they are both divisible by the number 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So again, this is how two different fractions can equal the same thing. And that's what you're looking for. So the easiest way for you to figure that out is by reading the graph and identifying each individual point. So let's look at this graph. You already see that this graph does not pass through the origin. Now remember, the origin is equal to 0, 0. Now, let's work with that later, and let's try filling out this table using the graph. So you see the x and the y. The 0 does not have a point, because here's 0 for x, and it doesn't have a point that goes up. So we can't fill this in yet. I wonder what this is. We'll figure that out later. Here's 1. We know how to read a graph, so if x is 1, follow the x-axis here. To find the y, we need to go up. 1, 2, 3. So when x is 1, y is 3. Let's fill that in. Next one. Let's look at 2. When x is 2, y is 5. Keep going. When x is 3, y is 7. When x is 4, y is 9. And it doesn't give us what 5 would be, but if we follow this pattern, we could see that 5, if we followed a pattern of increasing by 2, should be 11. Let's go back to 0 though, because we still haven't figured this one out. If we see that as x increases by 1, so here you go, 0 plus 1, 1 plus 1, 2 plus 1, it's an increase of 1. And y is an increase of 2. But how do we figure out what the y value would be for 0? Well, we'll go backwards. So if we're adding adding 2, to the y value for each 1x, to figure out what the 0 would be, we need to do the opposite because we need to go backwards. So here's 1, 3, and if we went backwards, the line would be here. This is where the point would be. Look at my cursor. And we see that it would be 0, 1. And then you check to see if the pattern is correct. So it maintains the pattern of x plus 1 and y plus 2. You should see that. So the first question I ask you is, would the graph pass through the origin? Use the table to justify your answer. How do you answer that? Look at your table. Look at the graph. The origin is 0, 0. Again. So does this graph pass through 0, 0? When you look at your table, you see that it's 0, 1. So this graph clearly does not pass through 0, 0 because it is 0, 1. So when you answer this question, this line does not pass through 0, 0. And I'm actually going to change this. Would the line pass through the origin? Sorry. And I'll make that change before you do the sheet. All right? So now you have to answer the question. Does this graph represent a proportional relationship? Here's a few ways you could answer this. The first way, take two of the points. So let's see. Let's work with 1 and over 3. I wish I make that a little bigger. 1 over 3. And let's work with 2 over 5. That's large. So let's see if these two fractions are equal to each other. The easiest way to do this is actually divide, because we know that fraction line means divide. So what I'm going to do is open this up, calculator. 1/3 is basically saying 1 divided by 3. So 1 divided by 3 equals, and you could just leave that as 0.33, sorry, 0.33. Now, let's do 2 divided by 5. Ooh, that would be 0.4 or 0.40. These two values are not the same. So when I answer the question, the graph below is not proportional because the coordinates or ratios, you want to use this word ratios. A ratio is, let's Google it for you. A ratio is a relation between two amounts. So the relation between these two amounts are not equal. That's all. That's pretty much how you explain that one. So let's look at another way we could answer this question. The graph below is not proportional, or you could write does not represent a proportional relationship because the line does not pass through the origin. If you remember the video before, if this line does not pass through 0, 0, then it is not proportional. So you could use that in your answer. You could say that this graph does not represent a proportional relationship because the line does not pass through the origin. But you need to prove it. If you prove it using the table, that is acceptable. You could even write, this is shown in the table. Just to say, look, I did it. It shows that it doesn't pass through the origin, and that's how I know. Or you show this work right here, and you could answer the question like this. Now, let's try and make these answers a little better. So we know that the graph is not proportional because the coordinates or ratios are not equal, right? But we want to also demonstrate that we know that proportional relationships need to be equivalent. So you could write proportional relationships should be equal. These are not. It could be that simple, ladies and gentlemen. This one, the graph below does not represent a proportional relationship because the line does not pass through the origin. This is shown in the table. Is good. But we could also state more. So we could say a line must pass through the coordinates 0, 0 to be considered a proportional relationship. You see, this is what I expect your answers to look like. The question that you have on your portfolio sample is very similar. You should fill out your table, you should answer question A, and you should definitely answer B similarly to the way that I answered them in this problem. Now, if you need any help or assistance, you know how to reach me, you know how to reach Ms. Fishman. We are available. Expect a new problem or problem set every single day going forward because we need to get these problems done. We need to do 2 different classwork samples. This is just one question for the first sample. So we need to make sure that we are on top of this. All right? All right. Good luck, guys.